Welcome to another episode of the Lightspeed Investing Podcast. Today, I've got Shanan, a corporate finance attorney based in New York, who's also started a new company of hers. And I'm so excited to bring her on because she's a bona fide professional who's going to share with us her insights on how she went from being so immersed in the traditional corporate world to now doing her own thing. Shanan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. Hi, Philip. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a long time coming, right? For let's get together. I know you're busy and I'm busy. And I would want to start first by saying, Shanan, like what allowed you or what was your, I would say, reasons for getting into corporate finance, right? As that is, I would say, the origin place.
So for me, I'm a first generation college student and I went to Columbia for undergrad and discovered that there were more than 5 or 6 career opportunities, like the one you explored, being a doctor, um, when you go to school. And I learned in economics classes about this world of finance. I was really curious about it and ended up working in the finance spaces and literally working with every role that you could possibly do in the finance space on Wall Street, and then going back to school for my JD and an MBA and working at a family office, which is still in the finance space and the investing space, particularly for families, while I was getting my degree. And then I went into law, where I did corporate restructuring, which is still corporate finance. It's just when everything goes wrong, and switching to regular corporate practice, and ultimately found it to be something interesting, something where a lot of people don't understand how finance actually relates to life. Uh, For me, that was the only way I could really learn this because there was no prototype. It wasn't, I was the first in my family to go to college, the first to
Mm.
really have access to these worlds. And everyone speaks in jargon. So I had to find a
Yeah,
way to
right.
turn it into English.
Well, hey, let's first start by addressing what a family office is, because I think a lot of people that may not be in the know, they're gonna think that, right, it's no different than the business conference room that I'm operating out of in my home, right? And that is not what we're talking about.
Not in that case.
No.
In the case that I'm speaking of, it was a billionaire family who essentially had a business where they're investing the family's assets and
Correct.
using it as a tool to really be a family in business and to achieve whatever goals they might have. Sometimes it's philanthropic, and some parts of it are also utilizing their skills and passing on those skills and
Right. It's
actually.
like the investing branch of one's family, right?
Correct.
Specifically for high net worth individuals. Um,
Specifically for that,
and
right.
to my understanding is usually 20 million and up. Is that correct?
So
Or
for single family office, it's typically 50 million and up. This was a billionaire family office, so they had a few zeros after that.
right.
Then, but for multifamily offices, they are essentially leveraging a service where they either group together, and so they can leverage attorneys, accountants, and financial professionals to help them with investing,
Mhm.
and essentially share services. And those can be, you can typically join those starting at the $5 million or $10 million mark, depending on the family office, but ideally it's 20 million and
Mhm.
above.
That's right. Now, for you, you're currently a New York girl, city girl, but were you always that way? Were you born here in New York, or
I am an Ohio girl.
oh, you're an Ohio girl? You're from the Midwest, just like me, right?
Yes, Kansas,
So
Ohio.
that's right. So for you, right, coming from the Midwest, being in the Big Apple, and going to Columbia, right? What is the biggest transition for you that you had to adjust?
I had visited before I
Mhm.
went to school at Columbia, and of course, getting used to the cities. The city is entirely different, and navigating the subway system was a Work, I will say at first. Logistics of just getting around the city and not ending up lost in the wrong part of the city was just like the goal when I first arrived. Because it's a whole new world. The walking part, I loved. I love that you could walk everywhere. But since I had visited New York before, I called my mom. This was actually I called her a few weeks before 9/11. I was visiting, New York, and my friends, we all went to Windows of the World, and I called her from there, and I was like, "I'm never coming home." And she goes, "You have to." So I was just like, "Fine, consider me a permanent visitor." So it was just a matter of time of how I got back to New York, and fortunately got into Columbia, so that was an easy transition.
Okay, love it. Yeah, see, for me, I'm a city boy that loves the suburbs. So I've decided to leave the city to be here in Kansas, and I don't think I'm ever going to leave. In terms of my permanent residence, I will have additional residence, through different real estate properties that I'm looking to have established, right? But yeah, I love Kansas. So it's a little bit different, obviously. I love the fresh air and the quality of food, right, with our animals and whatnot. But I guess when you went to Columbia, did you always know you were going to be a lawyer and study corporate finance?
So, okay, the corporate finance, that was the adventure. The lawyer part, I was the kid who my parents, when I was a small child, everyone asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Mhm.
And I told them I'd either be an artist or a lawyer. And of course, my parents are like, "How do we get you to be the lawyer?" And so I told them, well, if I had a work put in an art gallery, I'd consider myself an artist, so then I could be a lawyer. I kid you not, within a year, I won a children's art contest for the entire county. I had no idea. I never thought I'd win it. And ultimately, the work that won, they put in a children's art gallery that they were opening that year.
Uh-huh.
So I was an artist. So at that point, I was going to have to be a lawyer.
Oh, okay. So you got that fulfilled. It's so funny. I actually, when I was younger, I think in like third or fourth grade, I had a piece that got, it was a 3D, I still remember this. It was a art piece on 3 dimensions. And I
Ooh,
kind of, yeah, I made a very, I would say, artistic view of the Kansas highways, but it was like, 3D inwards
I
and some.
see the love of Kansas.
Yeah, and but it was like a blend. It was like there's like houses on the sides, whatever, and it got featured in our local McDonald's. I
Oh,
think on
that is so
I think on
awesome.
like 153rd and whatnot, whatever it was. So that was my artistic um contribution to the world, Shannon.
Hey, hilarious enough, my family, we were actually leaving church and we were at McDonald's when I found out I won the contest. My teacher called.
Wow, that's funny. So you got that out the way, and then you're like, I'm gonna go be a lawyer,
Right.
and right. So compared to most, you had it figured out early on, right? Now, was law school as I would say fulfilling for you, and the law career as you had imagined when you were a child?
No. Um,
And why is that?
I think there's every lawyer, I think, comes at law differently, but I do think there is this there law is very much like a skeleton or a framework
Uh-huh.
undergird society, and part of me is very much freeform. So if understanding and appreciating the structure was fun, I like to also know what the structure is and move around it. It's kind of like every human has a skeleton, but we all come out looking different. And but it takes a lot of exposure to things in practical spaces to really be able to utilize that body of knowledge. It's applied everywhere. Lawyer personalities can be fun. Um, and we can be different. Some of us are I'm on the quirky side. Most lawyers, I think, have a more taciturn style of personality. And so dealing with us can be not so fun for even most people, including lawyers sometimes. And so it's balancing that. There's the part where lawyers are like, well, this is the rule. It's always been the rule, but yet the rules adapt. I'm
Mm.
more of the person who's like, okay, let me understand the rule. Let's understand the why. And can it be adapted or fit into the circumstance?
Is it true that lawyers in general are very, very transaction oriented?
there's litigation lawyers and there's transactional lawyers.
Uh-huh.
I have litigated and I am a transactional lawyer. I am not transaction oriented, but there are
Mhm.
plenty who are.
Ah,
I'm more relationship oriented, but
absolutely. That's why that's why you were featured here, as a guest, right? But I guess so. All those factors that you just mentioned, is that why you have now sought out to doing your own thing and created your own enterprise as of, I would say, what, several months ago?
yes. So I part of it was, is this the best use of my time, energy, growth? I liked what I learned in the sense of I don't think had I not gone into some of the big law spaces with some of our, you know, billion-dollar enterprises and clients, etc. If I hadn't gone into those spaces, I wouldn't have seen the things that I was able to see. And it's fascinating and interesting. But I still have a heart for people who want to understand what
Yeah.
they can do and how they can use finance and law to better their lives because
So it's really like fulfillment, right?
it's
At the end of the day, yeah, fulfillment and maybe even purpose.
I think of it as a purpose because I was the last person who actually wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Oh, really? Wow.
Really, because I knew I had no like, a lot of people think being an entrepreneur is easy. "Oh, I wanna be an entrepreneur because I don't want anyone telling me what to do." Everyone's telling you what to do. Your bank account is telling you what to do when you're an entrepreneur, and I knew it was hard. Also, you have to put in your own infrastructure and systems.
I know.
I know that's hard. I like having frameworks and systems and then weaving around them.
Right. And now you have to build your own first, right?
And then I have to build my own
I
first.
know. Yeah.
So, but at the
It,
same
it's
time,
so funny because I remember when I learned about business in sports, they say if you just ask someone, what do you think your chances are in going to the Olympics? They'll immediately write themselves off. They're very realistic in that regards. But when it comes to building businesses, a lot of people are like, yeah, I can start a business and be successful, not rightfully understanding that that is like the Olympics of
it
business, like
it
starting your own, right? It is. But the paradox, right? Like
it
to
is.
to totally neglect and disqualify your own self when it comes to the actual sports Olympics, and then to and to say no, like I'm gonna be able to do it for the actual business side. It's just kind of paradoxical, right?
Well, let's think about it. If you look at, like, I don't know, Michael Phelps, he's a human fish. Like, physically, his hands are somewhat webbed. Like, he literally biologically fits the definition.
He is a sea creature.
He's a sea creature.
He is a sea
People
creature. Yeah.
people can look at themselves in the mirror and say, "I don't look like a sea creature. I am definitely not a mer person." Um, LeBron James was built for basketball. He's 6'8", like perfect height for dribbling, dunking, everything. And if you're 5'3", you kind of know that just probably was not your calling unless you're Muggsy Bogues. And so ultimately, with business people, though, it's a little bit more deceptive because you're like, I know that kid who built $1 million business and they dropped out of high school.
Right.
And you're like, well, I did everything else. I went to college. I did all these things. Of course, I can build a business. Maybe, maybe not.
I know. And that's the I would say the great insights of life that you kind of have to figure out as you take action and journey through, right? What would you have to say? What has served you most? Because I just had this conversation in my last podcast in regards to learning from a formal education versus the format of self education.
I've always been self-educated in some ways because I went to underperforming high schools. So in order to
Oh.
actually get the grades and teach myself things to prepare for a Columbia, to get the
Mhm.
high ACT score and test scores that I needed for to even apply, I had to teach myself
Mhm.
outside of school. That education was not coming from teachers. So I've always done that. And it's necessary. I think if someone wants to be a business owner or have a business or even be in a very small startup, they have to be someone who's curious and who's going to self-educate. A lot of people who go to school, they're very good when someone teaches them specifically in a school format, but then they have to be willing to hit the ground and try and fail up. So that's the biggest separator. I do aerial exercises because it's like Cirque du Soleil, except for I am not that good. But I enjoy it. But I've seen myself get better, and I get to see that ramp up in the curve where there was a whole probably a year and a half I could not lift myself consistently and stay in the air on fabric or in a hoop. And then next thing I know, after that year and a half, within like 2 months, I was able to climb all the way to the ceiling.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike, right? There's that like threshold transition period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think doing activities like that is like the big separator between someone who's formally educated and someone who's not. The person who failed out early, well, they failed out early. They had to fail up. The person who got the A's and they get that validation, there's a long period of time where there's no validation and they won't see their growth and they have to still keep at it anyway or find ways to make transitions because you're gonna do stuff wrong. Like even if you know to do everything right, you can run a whole checklist. I guarantee you there is a scammer out there somewhere who has figured out what that checklist is and they will present that to you. You're
Mhm.
going to mess up. Even if there is no scammer, right? You don't know everything. I don't
No.
know everything. I'm an attorney and even the 40-year attorneys know a lot, but they still will find things they don't know in the
Yeah.
process. And they might know the law, but they don't know the business.
Right.
It's that willingness to discover, that willingness to try, and
Absolutely.
then just tweak as you go.
So obviously that's a really key insight. But for you, if you had to speak to like a fellow 18-year-old self, right? Do you think like now versus what you went through, do you think you would try to convince yourself to go get out of corporate finance, or do you think it's shaped you to become the person who you are to want to pursue this current purpose, right?
In my situation, I could not be who I am and do what I'm doing if I had not gone that track. There is no set of exposures or experiences that would have allowed me to be where I'm at. I'd be an entirely
So
different.
what would that conversation look like, right? If you're talking to like a younger version of you, or even like just to the audience, like the biggest wisdom points and maybe pitfalls to avoid.
I think for me, what I would say to my 17, 18-year-old, 16-year-old self, because I started college early,
Oh.
would be fail up. Don't think you have to get it right.
Mhm.
Don't be so rigid or hard on yourself. Like I was very hard on myself. Like the Asian F, and I knew the Asian F. Like there was no get. I got in trouble for getting a 94 in calculus.
Oh my
Everybody in
God.
my family took calculus, but me. And so I would tell myself very lovingly, it's okay.
Mhm.
It's going to be okay. Getting a B isn't a disaster. The world has not fallen out.
Mhm.
And honestly, the B is kind of where it's at. You know enough. And then to do enough, you know enough to do enough. And you know enough when to ask for help, and yet you're not taking it too seriously. That would be what I would tell my younger self. If I was, I think telling someone to go to college or not go to college, I have no dog in that fight, but I would have known tools, how to make that much more financially feasible, particularly on the grad school front, because I got a lot of scholarships for undergrad. So that
I see.
helped me significantly. I
Yeah.
didn't have much debt. I think
Yeah.
I had like $1,500 worth of debt coming out of Columbia.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really. That's
Grad
awesome.
school was the opposite.
Yeah. They don't swing that way in grad school, huh?
No, they beat me up in grad school, but
Yeah.
so I think in that sense it was financially worth it for me. I think for people who take out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of
Hmm.
dollars of debt to go to undergrad, then there's a different calculus. But even then, that B is probably where it's at. as opposed to just having to get A's, unless you want to be a lawyer, in which case, yeah, go for the A's, but still give yourself a break. At least, in the summer, treat yourself to something kind.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest, well, I mean, similar to the ones that I know, right? It's like fail forward, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to take calculated risks accordingly. And in your case now, right? Like always go for it if you know what's in your heart to be the thing that you want to do, right?
The only thing you can, like, I almost didn't apply to Columbia. My guidance counselor actually laughed in my face when I gave her my list of schools and said, "You think you're going to end up where?" She literally hurt herself. She had had kidney surgery. She laughed so hard they had to take her back to the hospital. Um, I actually went to the post office, had my envelope with my application stamped. I held it for a week. So it was past the date, but it was postmarked by the right date. And then I dropped it in the mailbox because I realized if I didn't, I was telling me no.
Mm.
And if
Was
I
that your number one school of preference, by the way, or?
I wanted to be in New York, Columbia was my dream school and it had a campus. I didn't want to go to NYU because NYU's campus was Washington Square Park. Columbia actually had a campus.
Yeah, I'm not privy to these things, so okay, good to
Yes,
know.
it was my dream school.
Wow. I did not know that, Shannon. I mean, we kind of in our conversations just brushed over that you were a Columbia grad, but yeah, I mean, obviously getting into that caliber of university has always been difficult. Traditionally speaking, I just didn't know that background story. So that's amazing. You always bet on yourself, right? And the progress and work that you've poured in to achieve that outcome and just kind of see where the universe takes you.
Exactly. Don't tell yourself no. I say if it's your dream and you know why it's your dream, not someone else's dream,
Right.
go for it.
I love that. I just finished reading. Like I couldn't stop, so I devoured the book The Alchemist over this past weekend.
Oh,
Before I even actually, I have it right here. Look, it's in the back of this. I don't know if you can see it, but I ever since I picked it up, I like couldn't drop it. It literally says to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation. And it hit me so hard. It was like a soul freight train, and I couldn't help it. I mean, I told myself I would just read a little bit of it, and I just ended up reading the entire thing. Like I didn't sleep. It was Sunday night too. I didn't sleep till like 3:30 or 4 because it was like 3 4 hour quick read. But yeah,
I love it when I
like
quit a chapter, read a whole book.
yeah, seriously. But I mean, for me, it really invigorated my own sense of purpose. Like the whole time I was reading the book, I knew I couldn't put it down because my heart was beating. And the reason why my heart was beating is because it also continually, right, reinforced my own decisions to forego medicine, to get into business, so then that one day I can become an NBA team owner, right? Which in order to do that, you need $5 to $10 billion in today's marketplace. And you can never accomplish that just by being a surgeon, no matter how great the surgeon salary is. So, but that's why I myself am Jayhawk raised in Kansas. And when I talk to a lot of people, there's a lot of common, I would say, sticking points. And so even though it's in different formats, right? That's why I love success principles so much, because you can always go back to them and rely on them, right? If you just study um, others who have, I would say, journeyed further on, right, compared to you. So thanks so much, Shannon. I really appreciate these insights. Any parting words for our audience listening in?
I think the only parting words I have, and it's as you just pointed out, you had to make some shifts to be able to, become an owner of your own career effectively. And some things you can't do just by being a surgeon. I think we're trained to say, okay, this route will quote give us ownership. And there's no true route that gives you ownership unless you take ownership and
Yep.
learn what to do. And that's one of the reasons why I founded Perfectionistas, because I get to help people do that.
Yeah. Always, always, always do not be afraid to test the depths of your greatness. And with that, Shannon, I appreciate you being on. What is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
So the best way for people to get a hold of me is to check out my website at shannonterale.com. So SHANANTERALE.com. My contact information is there. You can even potentially reach out and meet with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If you ever are in New York and you want to talk to Shanan in person, or maybe just meet her virtually, shananterale.com. And again, Shanan, it's been a pleasure. I will see you next time. Okay.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.